Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started if everyone is ready. Is everyone ready? Okay, we've asked all of you to come today. We want to announce the arrest for murder, burglary, and sexual battery. Antoine Javian Sanders, black male, date of birth 12/30/1999. On February the 23rd, 2017, Escambia County Sheriff's deputies reported to and did a welfare check on a home in the 5000 block of Statler Avenue. During the check, deputies discovered the body of a 58-year-old white female, Susan Midyett. Her death appeared to be due to natural causes. During the investigation, it was determined that Susan was a victim of homicide and her house had been burglarized. DNA evidence collected at the scene revealed that Susan had been sexually assaulted, and the evidence, of course, through DNA transference, led to the arrest of Mr. Sanders. Again, he has been charged currently with the murder, sexual battery, and burglary. Sanders has also been tied to at least 4 other burglaries in the Pensacola area. Another reason why we wanted to call the press conference was to let our community know that we have this individual off the streets in our community. What is particularly frightening about this case is the investigation continues, and again, there may be more charges added to this, is that we are aware that he did stalk his victims. Mr. Sanders' M.O. was to stalk 50-year-old plus white women for several days, which led then to the burglaries. We think what we have here is one of those instances where an individual began to escalate in their crimes and criminal activity. And so today we want to assure the citizens of Escambia County the due diligence that was practiced. Took us a little bit of time, but we eventually got to where we need to be, and that's Mr. Sanders is in custody. I will now introduce Chief Deputy Chip Simmons.
Thank you, Sheriff. As the Sheriff mentioned, it took us a little while, and I just want to make a point that if you break into a house and if you kill someone, time will not protect you. 1 year later, you're still a monster. You're not forgotten. The victim is not forgotten, and you'll be held accountable for the despicable acts that you've committed. Ms. Midyett was 58 years old, and she had 3 children. She was only here because she was a traveling physician's assistant, trying to help people. She lived alone, and she was the victim of this crime. I would also like to say Sergeant Jason Barnes is here. Colonel Robert Quinata is here also, and if you have any more questions about specific details, they'll be glad to give that information to you. And now I'll turn it over to State Attorney Bill Edens.
Thank you. As the Sheriff indicated, the defendant has been charged with homicide, sexual battery, and burglary. At the time of the crime, he was 17 years old, which means that he was a juvenile when the crime occurred. As a result, today in juvenile court, we had a hearing, and he was held in secure detention under the juvenile charges of those 3 counts. We have filed a direct information that allows us to transfer him from juvenile court to adult court, and that transfer will occur today. Tomorrow, he will then have a first appearance again in adult court, where he will have a first appearance on those 3 charges, the homicide, the sexual battery, and the burglary. I would make 2 other observations at this time. First of all, we will present this matter to a grand jury. As you know, under Florida law, in order to charge anyone with first-degree murder, it's necessary that we present the matter to a grand jury. We will seek an indictment for first-degree felony murder as well as first-degree premeditated murder. I would expect that that presentation to a grand jury would occur within the next 3 weeks. In addition to that, I will go ahead and announce today that, as some of you may know, because of the fact that he was a juvenile, the death penalty is not an option. He is not eligible for the death penalty since he was a juvenile. I would like to thank the Sheriff's Office for their continued working of this case, and I'm very pleased that an arrest has been made, and I'm very confident in our ability to prosecute this case effectively as a result of the good work that was done by the Escambia County Sheriff's Office.
And at this time, before we open for questions, I'd like for Sergeant Jason Barnes to please come forward. Captain Mike Gilmore and Colonel Quinata, please come forward. As always, we like to give credit where credit's due, and I would like for the reporters that are assembled here in the community to understand that it's due to the professional work of these gentlemen here and the women that are assigned to the investigative section, again, that led to the arrest of this individual. We'll answer any specific questions you may have, again, if they are legal in nature as to the moving forward of the prosecution. Of course, Mr. Edmonds will answer those. Anything specifically about the case itself, we'll allow Colonel Quinata and his staff to answer. Any questions? Yes, sir.
How did Mr. Sanders become an original suspect?
When a homicide investigation or suspicious death, we do due diligence as far as collecting any type of evidence that's on scene. Also, during the autopsy, biological evidence is searched for, and if any is located, swabbed and then submitted. Once that's submitted, of course, it takes a little bit of time. When we were able to get the information back, we knew that we had a male contributor, and then eventually that person was already in the combined DNA database known as CODIS, and we were able to obtain a name. That's how we come up with Mr. Sanders as being the suspect.
He was somebody that was involved in previous burglaries. Are you able to say at this time if there's anybody else that was connected with him when he committed these crimes, or are you guys searching out any other possible suspects in relation to those burglaries?
Good question. Yes, we feel on this specific crime of the homicide, he was a lone offender. However, the investigation continues, and as days go by and things develop, we tend to learn a little more. However, he did have some co-conspirators in some of the burglaries that had occurred.
I'm looking at the jail roster right now, and he was booked back in January for, it looks like the same thing, burglary, damage to property, that sort of thing. Is this kind of a similar case that you were talking about when you said he has a pattern?
That is correct. That is correct.
Any idea how many other victims could be out there?
Well, part of doing this press conference is hopefully that people that weren't aware and maybe live in the geographical area where this occurred, they will see this, and if there's any likeness or similarities to their case in the burglary patterns, they will contact us, and we will investigate it and be able to include or exclude them.
What's the burglary pattern?
Well, the burglary pattern, as far as that, is where the suspect lived. That geographical location, it was pretty much condensed just down to that area. I'd say probably within a 5 to 6 mile radius.
You said, Sheriff Morgan said previously that he stalked women in their 50s, and then would burglarize their home. Is that correct?
That is what he said.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was he looking for anything specific? I'm just trying to narrow it down. You know, if I'm a woman in my 50s and I'm watching Channel 3 tonight and I'm hearing this, and I go, oh my gosh, you know, my home was burglarized. Could this be the same guy that did it? Is there anything that you can kind of, give more to narrow it down?
Yeah, I think I can answer that.
Sure.
Yes, we had some reports from this area in Perdido Key where people actually had a feeling that someone had been in their house, meaning that their house had been entered. And this young lady even made a comment to some friends that, I got this creepy feeling that someone's been in my house. Of course, indications are usually that there's a screen off or the door's been forced, etc. So what we're encouraging people to do, again, is to be more observant of their surroundings. If you have reason to believe, and I'm surprised at the number of people who are actually victims of burglaries. I can't tell you the number of neighborhood watches that we attend, and people say, well, my house or my car was broken into and nothing happened. And we ask the question, well, you did report this crime. And the answer is no. It doesn't do any good. So what we're saying is again, anyone in this area that was burglarized, or you think that your home may have been entered, there's indications that someone was there, please report these instances, because that's part of the MO that this individual used here. So yeah, you need to be concerned about this. That's why we're having the press conference.
Sorry, you said this was in a 5 mile radius where all these different burglaries took place?
Yes, sir.
Was this in describe the neighborhood, is it?
Well, Perdido Key area, specifically, as the sheriff had mentioned, the name of the road, it is located off of Gulf Beach Highway as you approach Sorrento Road.
So are they houses that are easier to penetrate opposed to middle-class homes, low-income homes?
Well, I think the best way to characterize that is This young man's 17 at the time. He had no motor transportation besides his feet. So bicycle or walking on foot, whatever, so that kept him close. He didn't have the ability to reach out and go to, say, Cantonment or Molino or different areas of Pensacola.
He wasn't that mobile. Kevin, you had a question?
Was he in custody when he was identified as a suspect in this, or did you have to go out and get him at some point?
He was in custody on the charges that you mentioned earlier, on the burglary charges.
And you spoke to him stalking. I guess, do you have any sense of, like, was it just him staking out a house, or was he actively following people? When you say he was stalking, can you talk any more about what that entailed?
Absolutely both. Because he lived in the neighborhood, he was able to, just as you probably know what time your neighbor goes to work, or so he's able to see people's patterns that live in the vicinity, so he would know when they're home or when they're not home.
Are you able to say how the woman was murdered?
Mr. Edmonds, do you want us to speak to that issue?
Yeah, go ahead.
She was by strangulation. She was killed by strangulation. Any other questions? Y'all? Sheriff, you want to conclude?
Thank you all very much.